I never thought I'd be here, and I'm not just talking about YouTube, I'm talking about living. You know, people ask me all the time, Calvin, why are you so hyped and happy? I say, 'cause I'm alive. You don't know all the stuff I've been through, and I fought to get here. Yeah, I fought. And now I'm glad that I finally get to tell my story. The story about when I had a stroke. I'm doing this to encourage someone who's going through a tough time right now. You will make it. Everything came so easy as a kid. Schoolwork, baseball, basketball, football. I enjoyed all sports, but basketball was just life to me. It was my heart. I remember winning a championship 3 years in a row. I was something else. I believe that if I would have worked hard enough, I could have made it to the NBA. I was the best at baseball though. I could hit a baseball 314 feet at 12 years old. If you know anything about baseball, you know that's a ways. But everything changed, just like that. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 12 years old. I was going to Marshall Middle School at the time. I had a basketball game that night, and I was so excited because my friend was coming over after the game to spend the night. So the day was just a regular day for me. So I thought it was pretty normal. My dad would drop me off at 8 every morning, got to school, ate my breakfast, and went to class. I started to have a headache, and it wasn't your regular headache. Something was different about it. This was the worst headache of my life. I couldn't even hold my head up. I could see little circles and dots, and it seemed like letters. And it was a headache that I had never experienced before. So I thought, like most people think, that it would go away over time. But it just didn't. I'll never forget, it was 10 o'clock, we was going to third period. The headache was still strong. I didn't know what to do. I went to class and I put my head on the desk. And you know, like most kids on Friday, everybody, you know, just loud and boisterous. They just ready to go. It's Friday. When I tried to lift my head up from the desk, it got so bad that it was a struggle for me to do it. But I did. And I looked up and I threw up. Everybody scattered and it got really quiet. And all I can remember is Mr. Wink saying, Calvin, go to the office. And I went to the office. I called my mom, told my mom, look, Mom, I have a headache. Can you please come get me? She said, all right, cool, I'll come and get you. She hung up with me, called my dad. She said, Dean, Calvin called me telling me he got a headache. Think he just want to cut school? And my dad like, look, it's a Friday, he got a game tonight, just let him come home, take a break. My mom comes to the school. Before she gets to the school, I threw up again. And she knew I wasn't playing at that point. So when she came and got me, I got in the car, she hit me with that mama question, baby, you all right? I said, yeah, Ma, I just need to rest. Growing up, I really didn't go to the doctor much. You know, we thought Tylenol and rest could cure everything. But we had no idea about this. I got home, got in the bed for like 2 hours, got up, I was feeling much better. Went in my mom's room, I laid on her bed. She was doing her hair. And she asked me again, she said, baby, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm fine now. So I sat up, looked at the mirror, and my mother went in the kitchen to go get something to drink. And I just looked at myself. Something wasn't right. And at that point, I just failed. My mom heard a thump. And she said, Calvin? She said again, Calvin? And I wouldn't answer. And my mom came back into the room and she looked at me. I thought she was gonna call 911 or she was gonna, do something first. But she prayed for me. My mother prayed for me. My mother said, in the name of Jesus, I will rebuke death off his life. And I honestly think that's the reason why I'm here today. So after she called the ambulance, she called my dad. And my dad said, I'll be home in a few minutes. I couldn't move my entire right side. And I was trying to get up off the floor with all my might. I just couldn't do it. And I just gave up. And it was the scariest feeling because of the fact that, you just realize you're trying to do something that you can't do. So we in the ambulance and they asked me all these questions like, what's your name? How old are you? And I just couldn't talk. They taking my blood pressure. All these people that I don't know are doing things to me and I don't know what's going on. So when I finally make it to the hospital, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I just fall asleep.
As a Christian, we talk about faith, and as a pastor, I preach about faith. But it's a whole different story when your faith is tested. We're constantly saying, well, what recreational drug is he on? Does he smoke? Does he drink? I said, my child is not on drugs. I said, you're wasting time. Doctors were everywhere because they were waiting for Calvin to come in. And they kept saying he had a complicated migraine. And they couldn't fathom a 12-year-old having a stroke.
We were standing there and the chief medical person at Children's said, let's give him a couple hours. I want to see if he's going to come out of it. And they gave him 2 hours. She said, I'll give him 1 more hour. And if it's a complicated migraine, then he should pull out of it. But he never did.
And I kept looking at the clock because it was ticking and ticking. And I looked like 5 hours and finally 8 hours had passed. And I understood deep in my gut that something was going on much worse than a migraine. It was the worst night of my life.
Saw Calvin in this little bed in this room, in the emergency room. All I could do was just hold him, and I would hug him, and I would kiss him on his forehead. He'd open his eyes, and I was crying, and then his eyes were so red. I mean, they were just blood red, and your heart, I mean, it's no way to even describe that because it's like you cannot even imagine this. And they had just won a championship. I just watched him just take kids out his own age.
We traveled to Children's Hospital, and that was the longest ride. I think that 5-minute ride was long.
And I had to follow the ambulance from Methodist to Children's. The window open. The whole time I'm looking at his face all the way down I-10. I'm watching this big light in the back of this ambulance, and I'm just driving right behind him and looking at his face the whole time. That is a surreal moment, and you can't even function. The only thing, you don't know how you drive, and you don't know how you even your mind is just on the fact that, Lord, you said you had us.
We walked in the door, and I was holding Dean's hand, my husband's hand, and as we began to talk to the doctor, and she began to explain to us that he had what you call the sticky platelet syndrome, and that's where the platelets would aggregate together and it would form this huge clot. And a part of it had broken off and gone to his brain. And she was explaining to us that his heart was too weak to operate on the brain because he had been so long without oxygen. And the brain was too weak to operate on the heart. And she told us if he made it through the week, they would do open heart surgery. And we just looked at each other. I looked at my husband, and then we looked at her, and I said, Miss, it won't be there tomorrow. I said, it won't be there tomorrow. And she just kind of looked at me like I was crazy.
And she picked the phone up and called the campus psychologist. She said, we got some hysterical parents here and they're going to need professional counseling. She called it professional counseling. And I just turned, I didn't want anybody to be there to judge what I was saying. I just wanted that to be me and God. I said, either you God or you not. That was my way of challenging God. I just said it within my heart, we'll see.
So I went into the chapel and I just laid on that dirty floor in the chapel and I began to pray and I began to tell God, I said, you know, God, I want my son to grow up. I want him to have children. I want him to get married. And God, I want so many things for my child. And at that time, they called us over and they said that, you know, I asked the doctor, I said, have you seen Calvin yet? He said, wait a minute, we're getting ready to see him right now. So we ran down the hall. And so we got down to the place where they held Calvin. And the doctor came out and I could hear her screaming, find it, find it. That moment was a moment I'll never forget. Find that clot, find that clot. It's gotta be somewhere, it's gotta be somewhere. And when I had a chance to look up at her and say, you're not gonna find it, because God has delivered him. And that was a defining moment for me. After we had conferred with that doctor, we went over to Walgreens and we were getting some things for Calvin. And God said that I've healed Calvin, now I'm getting ready to reward you for your faithfulness. Right. And as he told me, he said, every child's going to get out of this emergency room.
At the end of the week, nobody was in there but one child.
Felt like hours. It was a couple of days and I woke up and I sat up and I'm looking around and I'm hooked up to all these machines and I'm like, okay, why am I hooked up to all these machines? And the nurse comes in and I look at the nurse looks at me and she screams and I scream, everybody's screaming. She leaves the room and says, he's up, call his mom and dad.
This is a special time because we didn't think he was going to survive. And he's sitting there asking for mom and dad at 4 o'clock in the morning. And the place was pitch black where we were, loaded with people. And we were like, well, how are we going to get out? We can't see. And all we could hear was, step on us to get to your child.
My mom was crying. My dad was by my side. It was just the best feeling, man. All types of emotions were just going through our bodies. And when I tell you that I had a lot of work to do, I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to talk again. I had to learn how to write again. I had to learn how to tie a tie. I had to learn how to live again. But through all of it, God spared me. It just wasn't for me, it was for the people that saw me. And while I was in the ICU, fighting for my life, I mean, miracles were happening all over the place. It was so surreal that you would have to be there. And when I walked out of that place, they called me the little miracle. The story that God has for me is not over. It's just beginning. So just stay tuned.